A little while back, a dear friend of mine and former student, Antonio Stappaerts, posted a video describing the differences between art education and personal professional therapy, and highlighted the fact that in some cases, sometimes artists' expectations can cross that line a little bit. Now, in my personal experiences, as I described in my response video to his, I haven't encountered that a lot, but it does happen, so it's definitely an important video to watch. But that's not specifically what today's video is about. Throughout my entire career as a professional artist, and then subsequently becoming an art teacher, first in the public school system and then in my private online mentorship, something I've been doing for about 15, 16 years altogether, I have had the chance to work with and consult with thousands of artists. And I know from my own personal experiences, as well as the experiences of all of these amazingly talented artists I've had a chance to work with, that managing and navigating an artistic career is as much, if not more, an emotional and or psychological challenge than it is a technical one. And more often than not, growing as an artist requires us to learn how to manage both of these things in tandem, which is one of the reasons why having an art career can be so challenging. It's not just a technical skill. It's not just a service that you're providing to a client. This is, more often than not, for many of us, a very deep and personal form of self-expression. And as such, this requires us to dig deeper and sometimes have to face certain things about ourselves that don't only impact our art career, but impact our life as a whole. However, before I dig deep into this fascinating topic, I first want to share a very special announcement with you. In a couple of weeks, as of the date of this recording, October 18th, 2025, from noon to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, this is a Saturday, I'm going to be hosting my first ever live workshop, Visual Storytelling and Composition Masterclass. This is a subject that I've been teaching my students in my online mentorship for well over 11 years, and this is arguably one of my favorite topics to teach because it's something I know really well, and it's something that I know applies to pretty much every type of artistic career that you can pursue. Concept art, fine art, illustration, comic book art, animation, live action, you name it. So if you're interested, get in touch with me. I'll leave a link in the description. You can contact me through the contact form at lucidpixel.com, and I'll give you all the details, pricing, and all that kind of fun stuff. So let's make something very clear right off the bat. Is art something that you care about? Is art something that you love? Do you plan on doing it for many years, maybe the rest of your life, personally or professionally? Is it something that matters to you? Is it something that you want to grow at? If that's the case, then it's safe to assume that you're going to face many, many obstacles along the way, personal or professional. Now that said, everybody's journey's unique, and the type of obstacles that you face and how you react to and respond to these obstacles is unique to every individual. So don't think for a minute that it's a one-size-fits-all type of situation. This is one of the reasons why I like working with students one-on-one, because it gives me an opportunity to get to know them personally. What type of life do they live? What kind of background do they have? What kind of art style are they pursuing? What kind of obstacles might they be facing that's unique to everybody else, so that I can dig into my own experiences and find something that I can relate to, either technically or personally, to help them overcome this obstacle. But it's very, very clear that if you want to pursue a career like mine, being a private art mentor, that you need to be ready and willing and capable of helping artists overcome the emotional hurdles as well. Harkening back to Antonio's video about art versus therapy, there are very, very rare occasions, I could say less than a handful of times in the last 18 years since I've been teaching, that an artist will expect me to provide them with professional therapy. That's it's pretty obvious, and people generally know when it's something that is a little bit more demanding than what an art teacher or an art teacher's career can provide as far as that goes. So I'm not going to worry too much about that moving forward. If and when it ever does happen in those rare occasions, and I just let my student know right off the bat, I'm not qualified to answer that question for you because I'm not a counselor, I'm not a psychologist, but I am an artist, and I have had to navigate many very challenging emotional issues in my private life, in relationships, with money and career, with building a career, all of these things. Life happens to me every single day. Life is happening to me right now. And although I won't get into personal details about my personal life in that regard, right now I'm dealing with challenges I've never had to face before in my entire life, and I still need to continue to be an artistic professional through this. I still need to be able to produce these videos, to be able to motivate myself to continue to draw, and of course, I need to teach every single day with purpose, with clarity, with focus, and with passion. That every person that I meet, regardless of what's going on in my personal life, needs to experience the best version of myself. And that's the standard that I live by every single day. Every single time I meet somebody in person, that every person deserves the best version of me. However, I've also noticed these little sneaky backdoor issues that have come into my life throughout my career. Things you learn unexpectedly, just from pure experience, from just living the life of an artist. And these things can really hold you back. They can impede your growth artistically, technically, emotionally, psychologically, professionally. And those are the things I want to focus on today. Those sneaky little things that all of us, every single one of us artists, have to encounter at some point in our career. Sometimes it happens at the very beginning, and sometimes it doesn't happen until you've been working professionally for 50, 60 years. We all go through that same art journey, but we just experience these things at different times. This is one of the reasons why some people, for instance, really succeed financially as artists. They just have a very good business sense, and they've got their shit together in their early 20s. Other people don't get their shit together till they're in their 50s. Some people are technically extremely good at drawing very early on, but maybe their social life suffers a little bit. Where other people really learn how to network extremely well, and they really make a lot of professional contacts, and they're charming as hell. But maybe their technical skill has taken a little bit of a backseat. Things like that. And this first point might be a little bit low-key argumentative, although that's not my intention. And the reason I'm saying that is because not everybody might agree with me on this point, depending on the type of art career that you pursue, depending on the type of artist that you are. And that's the fact that you might be ignoring your passion to pursue what you feel is required of you. And a lot of that stems from the confidence in knowing that you are making the right artistic decision for yourself. And this is something that can affect artists at every career level. I mean, I've worked with artists, and I've consulted with artists that were the same age as me, who've been doing it as long as I have, who are just as technically skilled as I have, who might even have as prominent an online presence as I do. Maybe they're very good in social media, maybe they run great businesses and they're doing extremely well for themselves. Yet, they still have doubts in certain areas of their life because for one reason or another, maybe their profession pushed them down a certain path that got them a lot of success, that got them a lot of popularity, but they just feel unfulfilled. They feel they feel incomplete. They feel like perhaps they've been dedicating too much of their time and energy to the demands of somebody else throughout their career, but they're kind of at a point of their life where they're saying, what about me? What do I really care about? I feel that there's more to this picture than this service that I've provided this studio, these clients. Or maybe you're a younger artist who's really caught up in what all of these, quote, professionals are telling you. And you really don't have enough experience as an artist. You haven't hit enough obstacles and overcome enough of your own unique obstacles to be able to say, hey, listen, this is what I feel works best for me. And I know from experience, I've tried your way. I've tried his way and her way and their way. And honestly, I really have come to the conclusion that this is what I feel is best for me. And let's make a distinction here. There's a difference between knowing who you are, understanding your identity, having experience, and just being stubborn, where perhaps your ego's getting in the way and you are very sensitive to critique. And those are the types of artists and students very often that I refer to as yeah students. What do I mean by that? A yeah student is the one who has been working for a certain length of time, or maybe even they haven't been working for very long at all. They're good. They know how to draw. They have skill for sure. And they sign up for mentorship and they want to grow. They want experience from me, for instance. And every single time I give them a piece of advice or an art critique or a suggestion, they answer with, yeah. Implying through that reply, yeah, I know. To which I usually smirk and say, okay, so you understand most of the principles I've shared with you today. That's fantastic. So I just have a quick question for you then. Then how come I don't see that in your art? To which they go, yeah. And I go, okay, well, if you know it, then I think it's important to prove that. It's important to show that off, because if you've got this wonderful skill and knowledge, then use that knowledge, apply that knowledge. And let's clarify, I'm not insulting anybody. We all have a little bit of an ego. We can all be a little bit defensive, myself included, right? So I'm not insulting anybody for, quote, being a yeah student. It's something that I kind of laugh at and brush aside. But that's not the type of situation I'm dealing with today. Today we're dealing more with having confidence in your decisions, in your pursuits, but more importantly, prioritizing passion. And that's where things can be a little bit argumentative, a little bit controversial, because I've heard many, quote, professionals in art and in finance and business, you name it, who will tell you pursuing passion is a mistake. It's a recipe for failure, because it's very often characterized as being somebody who's so hippie, somebody who's so idealistic that they're trying to live the easy life. They're trying to abandon the hard work to just do what they feel is fun. The dopamine chasers, so to speak. And as such, you are not focusing on what is professionally viable, what will make you a stable living, etc. And you're going to end up poor and miserable. Don't do it. And I've heard this advice from all kinds of professionals, including art professionals. And it's my feeling, it's my strong feeling actually, that advice or that perspective is very short-sighted. It's very limited. It's very binary. It's very linear, because life is on a spectrum, something I say as often as I can. Nobody's black and white. We are all different shades of gray. We're all different colors. And the same applies to our thoughts, our careers, our finances, our professional pursuits. If art is something that you want to do on the long term, you have my word. You can find very quick short-term success by just doing what's technically demanded of you and pursuing whatever the industry asks of you. But when you've been doing it as long as I have, one of the things you start to learn is that industry is very inconsistent. That industry keeps changing gears. It's like fashion trends. Everybody's wearing gray hoodies now, and then a year later, everybody's laughing at the gray hoodie because you look like an idiot, because that's so last year. And art goes through trends like that as well. And when you've matured, when you've spent enough time in the artistic industry, and you've seen all of these trends come and go and then come again and then get rebranded and resurrect and die and come back and go and change, and then all these new technologies that start coming out of nowhere and changing everybody's perspective, and then everybody wants to do this and do that, and oh, we can now use this app and we can use this tool. At a certain point, if you keep chasing after that kind of stuff, you're basically somebody chasing after fashion trends. And you do that for long enough, and you're going to find yourself at a complete loss. You're going to find yourself burnt out. You're going to find yourself discouraged. And that's when most artists go through what I like to call an artistic identity crisis, something that I went through and I've described many times on my channel. Now, in many ways, that loop is necessary. I mean, if you think you've got it all figured out and you know exactly how to go about things, you're a robot, in my opinion. We need to explore. We need to experiment. We need to try new things. We need to grow. We need to evolve. That's natural. But you also need to develop that muscle in your brain where you need to know when you're stepping out of character and you're doing something artistically, you're doing something creatively, you're doing something professionally that rubs you the wrong way. It doesn't feel like you. And this is not just an art lesson. This is a personal lesson. It's about being able to look at yourself as an artist, look at yourself as a person, look at yourself emotionally, and say, who am I? Who am I? Am I who my mother or father want me to be? Am I what society wants me to be? Am I what the artistic professionals want me to be? Am I what my big brother or big sister want me to be? Or am I truly looking inside, looking at myself and saying, this is who I am, and this is what feels right to me? I love to have an open mind, and I love being taught things, and I love growing, and I love exploring subjects in a way I never have. This is one of the greatest things about my kids. They're constantly teaching me new stuff. They're constantly exposing me to new things. But I still need to be myself. I still need to be able to make that final decision myself. Why? Because I have to live with myself. I don't have to live with my kids for the rest of my life. They spend most of their time doing their thing, and I spend most of my time doing my thing. Even the people in my life who are closest to me, they're only with me a fraction of the time. I have to live inside my skin all the time. I have to live this career, hopefully, for the rest of my life. And that's why it's, in my opinion, mandatory at some point in your career to say, what excites me most? What inspires me most? What matters to me most? For some people, they really want financial stability. They've got big families. They've got, many responsibilities, an expensive mortgage. They live in a very expensive city where, property taxes are extremely high and all that kind of stuff. So in that particular case, they prioritize finances. So, okay, I'm going to pursue something that pays the bills better. In other cases, some people say, hey, I really don't care, man. If I can eat, if my cat is eating, my cat eats all the most expensive food. I can have broccoli and beef for the rest of my life. And I don't care if I live in a mansion, just living in this basement apartment, as long as I get a dehumidifier and it doesn't get moldy down here. And I have my nice drawing tablets, and I can work on my artwork and my comic books and my illustrations. And I've got a partner in my life that I love more than life itself. Or you're all alone and you wouldn't have it any other way. Just you and your lizard Pascal painting a mural in your tower all alone with your beautiful long blonde hair. No, I'm not referencing a Disney film right now. If that's what makes you happy, you need to be able to say, hey, I'm happy here. Thank you for all that advice. Thank you for all those tips, but I don't need more. I've got everything I need. You have to look at that inside voice and say, what is it that I need right now in my life to make me feel fulfilled? And there's no age requirement to this. I have seen and have these conversations with artists of every single walk of life. And I can say without a doubt that artists who start to lose sight of that, of what they're passionate about, of what they love, of what Sir Ken Robinson would call their element, their epiphany, at some point in time they start to burn themselves out. At some point in time, art just starts to become labor and nothing but. There's no emotional reward. It just becomes labor. It becomes a job. I mean, it would make absolutely no difference for them to work in telephone customer service as they would working in an art studio, because they're so emotionally disconnected from what they do. They just hate it. In fact, I can say I've had art jobs and I've been in art career situations that I hated so much, but I thought were good because they were, quote, art jobs, that when I lost that job and I was forced to get something that was non-art related, like working as a waiter in a bistro, I realized I came home at the end of the day far happier when I was working at the bistro. True story. I remember working at a place called Cine Express in Montreal. I don't know if it's still around. I haven't been there in a while. But despite the fact that my bosses sucked ass and he didn't want to pay me, I loved that job. I loved the clients. I loved the food. I loved the atmosphere. It was very artsy. A lot of students would show up from either Concordia University or Dawson College, because we were kind of wedged between the two. And I was that age too. And man, I had so much fun there. It was so fulfilling, and I was in shape because I was on my feet all day, and I ate for free. I couldn't complain. It really helped me with learning how to be social and break the ice with people and navigate the dramas of life, so to speak. I don't regret it at all. But today, that's a very different story. The artist that I am today, the artist that I produce today, is a product of a decision I made at a certain point where I said, I'm not going to chase after my career anymore. I'm going to make it. And I'm not going to make it by pursuing an art career that everybody else thinks is good for me, that everybody else is asking for me. And I'm going to take a risk, and I'm going to do what feels right to me. And that turned out to be the artist I am today, decades later. Probably one of the biggest and most valuable decisions in my life. Going back to the book I'm reading right now, Finding Your Element by Sir Ken Robinson, he talks deeply about passion. And he discovered throughout his life there were many things that he did, but then certain types of things that just came naturally to him. Certain types of things that just clicked, that he was praised for all the time because he just did so eloquently. He discovered at a certain point in his career, not looking for it, that he was a communicator, and arguably one of the most celebrated communicators of all time. Rest in peace, Sir Ken Robinson. A man who was a passionate advocate for the arts. A man who was a passionate teacher, a passionate humanitarian, who found his, quote, element, his passion, unintentionally. He had pursued many things throughout his career, and to greater or lesser success. Some things he loved passionately, certain things came very easily to him and very naturally to him, and other things felt like pulling teeth. And it wasn't until he acknowledged what came naturally to him that he realized what his passions were, what his affinities were, where he could put his natural born talents to best use. But it required him to discover that, to accept the fact that the thing that came naturally to him, the thing that people praised him for time and time again, was, imagine this, the best choice for him. And that's the piece of Ken Robinson advice I'm passing off to you. Don't take for granted things that come naturally to you. I've known many artists that I could see had this talent, visual storytellers, they're gifted colorists, they're incredible technically, their sense of space is phenomenal. They might be amazing with gesture, but that's something that they took for granted. For years they didn't think it was really a viable skill. And I point it out to them and I say, you're really good at that. Have you ever given that any thought? And they go, not really. I've always done this type of stuff. I've always been more of I did spaceships and sci-fi stuff. I never thought I was a people observer. And I'd say, well, how about in real life? And they'll say, well, yeah, I've been kind of the everybody's doctor type of person. Everybody always came to me for personal advice and said that I was very empathetic and very insightful, but I never thought that was something that translated into my art. To which I would say, well, it does, Because when we explore visual storytelling and body language and posing and character design, you really thrive at that. You're really good at that. To which they very often at some point will confess and say, that's something I've always really, really loved, but I don't know, my career kind of pulled me in a different direction and kind of put that aside. And I said, well, maybe it's time to revisit that. And I said, well, that's not necessarily what my studio I'm working at is looking for right now. To which I say, why did you sign up for my mentorship? And they'd say, well, because I wanted to discover what I was good at. And I went, bingo. Then they go, okay, maybe you got a point. Yeah. No. Am I telling him what to do with his career? Quit your job and, screw your kids and your family and your mortgage. Just do what I told you. No. I'm saying, don't be afraid to look inside. Don't be afraid to say, hey, who am I and how does that translate into my art? I think that what this requires at a certain point in pretty much every artist's career, and something that I see some people just have naturally, like my daughter Emily, for instance, they're just born with this talent, and it's the ability to be intelligently but stubbornly blind to everything outside of their world of imagination. I've noticed this quality in some of the best artists I've ever known. My daughter Emily is a really, really good example. Ever since she was born, she lived inside her wonderland in her brain. She's been like that since she was 5 years old. Now she's 25 years old and a professional artist. And I still see that. I look at her art, I look at her creations, the things that she loves, the friends that she has, and she's just so entirely Emily. She is all-encompassing Emily. And I don't see her changing for anybody, for me or anybody else. So the only thing I can do as an artist, as a professional, as a father, is just sit back and enjoy the ride, man. She's just a one-woman show. And that's the kind of thing that we all need to explore in ourselves at some point in time. I'm also, a little teaser, I just had a podcast that I recorded with a dear friend of mine and former student who has a very, very unique lifestyle. And somebody in this podcast, I'm trying desperately to be secretive about this, I expressed a very similar type of admiration towards her as I just said about my daughter, about Emily. You walk into her space and you walk into her world. And I called her, one of the things I accused her of being is the, quote, Jacob Collier of artistic creation. Jacob Collier being a musician, if you're not familiar with him, who is a young guy, I think he's definitely under 30 years old for sure, who a lot of musicians refer to as the, quote, musician's musician, the artist's artist. Somebody who's not that formally trained. I mean, he has taken music courses and stuff like that, but his growth path has always been very unconventional. He just had a vision. He has a vision. He has a focus. He has a desire and a high standard. So no matter what it is that he cares about, whatever he pursues, he just really wants to produce the best quality of that. He wants it to be as genuine as that. So when he mimics different artistic styles, different musical styles, be it R&B, be it blues, be it romance, be it reggaeton, be it whatever it is that he's doing, because he's very, very versatile in his artistic styles. He always wants the end product to really feel genuine and appeal to a demographic that listens to that kind of stuff religiously. So he's not just being a poser of a lot of different styles of art. He really does know how to diversify and become very multicultural in his particular style of art, of music. And as such, has been able to innovate and play with scales and measures and break the rules of music in a brilliant way that is considered genius by a lot of people. And this friend of mine that I did the podcast with, she's got that kind of personality. She does so many different things, and her artistic inspirations come from so many different places. But the thing she does best is, that thing I love about her artwork the most is, she doesn't question it. I envy her ability not to question her artistic choices. That's the kind of stuff that really leads to, in my opinion, a genius. And you have that in you. You have it in you. I don't know who her influences are in terms of family. I'm kicking myself right now that I didn't ask her about her family more, but I'm very curious how she was raised to have this confidence of self-expression. I'm really wondering where that came from. I wonder where Emily got that from. Well, of course I know where that came from. I'm her dad. I think the greatest gift I ever shared with my daughter was not passing down my artistic talent. It was just in respecting hers and allowing her to just have the confidence in expressing herself the way she did. I think as a parent of any artist, if you're a parent listening, the greatest thing you can do for a passionate, young, aspiring artist is just shut up and listen. Encourage them to do what they do. Be their best audience. Be the loudest cheer in the audience, and leave it at that. And if and when they want to pursue anything professionally, trust me, a passionate artist knows how to ask of that. They will ask desperately for that. You won't need to push them. But I feel that if society, if your career coaches, if the professionals that you meet at different events, if your parents, loved ones, guardians, friends, if you push too hard on an artist, I find that can do more harm than good. In fact, I would say the majority of the time that does more harm than good. Because what you're doing is you're ripping the voice out of the throat and you're saying, do this. But why did you feel the need to do that in the first place? As a professional coach, as a consultant, as a parent, why are you doing that? What is your desire? Well, my desire is them to grow at the thing that they're good at. But stop. Look at them. We're looking at a young artist. We're looking at somebody who's got incredible integrity, incredible talent, is growing faster than anything you've ever seen. Why do you feel the need to interfere? They're already doing it on their own. Artists who found their element, their passion, spend a lot of their life on autopilot. One of the things that I've seen with my daughter, something that I see in my own art very often, and something that I saw in this woman that I did the podcast with, is they very often don't even look back at things that they've produced. They're so focused on what they're going to do next. They're so focused on trying to cram as many of their projects in as possible that unfortunately a lot of them don't sleep very well because they're up all night thinking about stuff and creating things, and they can't wait to get up to work on their next project. They get frustrated because they didn't have enough time to do this thing, or they couldn't get that material they needed to be able to pull that off. They're living in this constant state of go, go, go. And these are not people who will burn out after 5 years of following career trends. These are people that do it for 60 years. And when you talk to a person like that 65, 75, 85-year-old, like Chuck Jones, for instance, the director of Looney Tunes, they're creating until their heart stops. They're creating until their arms fall off. And when you talk to them about their work, well, I hope you brought popcorn, because they're not going to shut up about it. A really good example of somebody like that is Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I love. Let's just say right off the bat, I've got an intellectual man crush on that guy like you have no idea. I love everything that comes out of that guy's mouth. I love what he represents. I love what he stands for. I love his intelligence. I love his passion. But most of all, I love how he just can't shut up when you get him started. He gets so fired up about talking about things he's spoken about a million times. He's so passionate about this stuff. That's a guy who's found his element. He, to me, has the soul of an artist. And it's no coincidence that he also, just like Sir Ken Robinson, has a deep respect for the arts, because he can relate to passion. He can relate to expression. He can relate to the universe of your mind. Now, what if you have all that passion? What if you're just fired up with passion every single day, and you love the idea of being an artist, and you love the smell of your drawing equipment, and you love watching art lessons online, and you love all of those books, but every single time you sit down to draw, you feel like you get hit in the face with the sledgehammer because you can't make any progress. Well, that's not an emotional obstacle then. You are more than motivated emotionally. That's a technical obstacle. That's when you reach out to a professional and say, hey, I have all of this desire, all of this passion, all of this drive, but every single time I pick up my pencil or my stylus or my paintbrush, within 15-20 minutes, I just can't get that idea out on a piece of paper. I can't get that onto my canvas, and then the fire goes out. And I've been doing this for days and days and months, and I'm just getting so frustrated. What am I doing wrong? And a professional teacher can be able to say, okay, you want to express that, you want to do this, well, here's the tools you need to do that. Here's the vocabulary to express yourself that way. Here's the tool. Here's what you do with your hands. This is how you set your stylus setting. And I love teaching students like that, because all you need to do is give them, $1.25 of gas in their gas tank. You just go, here's a little drop of gas here. Boop, that's all you get. And then they fire off like a rocket because they already wanted to do it all along. They just, there was just this chain around their neck, technically, that was holding them back. And the moment you give them just a little grain of advice, they shoot off. And it's incredibly exciting and rewarding as a teacher to watch somebody really get inspired to work and come back with stuff they're amazingly proud of, things that they've wanted to accomplish for years. Honestly, there's no better feeling in the world for a teacher. I'm going to mention one more thing before we close up today. And that's the fact that there's a very good chance that some of you, or even many of you, will say, Adam, I really, really want to feel that. I really, really want to experience that fire you're talking about, that passion. I want to find my element as an artist. And I'm really frustrated that I haven't been able to find it yet. To you, who's frustrated right now, I want you to realize that frustration of yours is a very, very good sign. Because that frustration means you care. That frustration means your passion matters to you, and you are sensitive and desperate to find it. And if that's the case, well, from what I've learned in my experience, both professionally and personally, frustration is one of the most powerful tools of self-discovery and innovation. It's through that frustration, that anger, that you seek answers. And you will find it, so long as that frustration keeps kicking you in the ass. Okay? With that said, I love you all with all my heart. Feel free to stick around, because I'm going to let the long, relaxing song continue playing after I'm finished talking. Remember, I have my workshop, Visual Storytelling and Composition Masterclass, on October 18th. You can check the description below and contact me directly for all the details. And happy painting. Take care.